Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting. As I would normally say in the council chamber, if you have mobile phones, can you put them on silent, please, or switch them off? And members of the committee officers, when we're not speaking, can we put our mics on mute? Going to the agenda, apologies, I have just one from Steve Hassel. I don't know if anybody else has any.
I don't, Chair, thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 2, which is late items to be introduced by me. Well, there's 2, and I'm going to ask Karen first to tell us about IT issues, and then it'll be Ian Woodhead to tell us about another late item. Karen, over to you.
Okay. Given that we've had substantial IT problems today, if the IT goes down during the meeting, we will endeavour to get it back as quickly as possible. But if a period of 10 minutes elapses, we'll abandon the meeting and then reconvene on a date to be agreed by the Chair and notified to members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Karen. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. It is with much regret that since the last meeting, Joan Darcy has passed away. Some of you may recall that Joan was a highly valued member of Conservation Advisory Committee over many years. She had very ably represented the Derbyshire Archaeological Society. Her knowledge of heritage in Derby and beyond was immense, and she had undertaken much detailed research herself. Joan's contributions at Conservation Advisory Committee meetings and to the planning process were always well considered, constructive, and regarded as most valuable by fellow Conservation Area Advisory Committee members. Joan will be sadly missed. Thank you, Chair.
Oh. I think we might have lost him altogether.
It looks like the Chair's trying to get back into the call. Just bear with a second. Chair, are you there?
He's back.
Yeah, I've just got the screen back again. For some reason, it just went off.
Okay,
hello,
over to
can
you,
anybody
Chair.
hear me?
Yes, over to you, Chair. We're up to item 3.
Hello?
Hello, Chair, can you hear?
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes?
I can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear us? Chair, can you hear us? Chair, can you hear us?
Karen, I'm trying to phone him, but his phone's busy, so he's probably trying to get through to us somehow or other.
Okay. Would the Vice Chair like to take over whilst we try and re-establish contact with Councillor Khan?
Happy to, Karen.
Thank you.
Did you say we're at item 3, declarations of interest?
We are, yes.
Are you back in now, mate? Your picture's up.
Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of July. Can somebody move them?
I'll move them, Chair.
I'll second.
Thank you. Minutes of the meetings of the Conservation Area Advisory Committee held on 16th of April and 11th of June.
Noted. Noted.
Thank you. Thank you, Lucy.
Hello, sorry,
item
can
6.
anybody hear me now?
Yes, Shiraz, we can hear you.
Right, for some reason it keeps going on and off, but I'm back now. Hopefully.
You're back.
Where we
Super.
go to item 6.
Item 6, yes, Chair.
Right, it's this minutes of the Conservation Area Advisory. Yeah. Have we done that?
We've
Yes,
done
we're
the-
on to
Yes,
Have
we've
we,
done
have
that.
we done
Appeals
item 6,
decision.
or do you want me to go through that?
It's appeals. It's up to Ian now.
Okay, yeah, all right, Ian, you can go through the appeals then.
Thank you, Chair. Just the two to report. You'll recognise the first one at 50 Sitwell Street, the application that came before this committee for two pairs of residential dwellings on the Sitwell Street frontage, and there was a refusal by committee on highways grounds, absence of car parking, and impact on future occupants by virtue of the presence of a protected tree, a beech tree at the back. Quite an interesting decision. You might want to read it. Well played to Councillor Paul Pegg. He was involved in this. Paragraph 10 reads on the issue of car parking. Accordingly, the proposal would conflict with Part 15 of Policy CP23. As you'll all know, that's the parking and transportation policy of the core strategy, which requires appropriate levels of parking to be provided, having regard to the realistic requirements of the users. So that's quite a key phrase, and what the inspector felt was that there would be pressure on the surrounding highway network as a result of there being no parking for this development. Although it's in a highly sustainable location, they felt that there would be some impact which would cause harm to the amenity of nearby users, including from traffic generation, access and parking. So worth a read. Paragraphs 11 to 15 conclude that the impact of the TPO beech tree would not be unduly injurious to residential amenities, given the aspect of the site and the characteristics of the proposal and the characteristics of the nearest property. So that was dismissed. So well done on that one. And secondly, 104 Swarkston Road was actually an appeal against a condition. We granted planning permission for a garage at the site, and the application also included a two-storey side extension, which we didn't like the design composition of, and the inspector duly agreed with us. So that was another good decision based on our house extensions policy. Worth a read, and I will take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Right, well, thank you for that, Ian. Certainly, that's welcome news as far as the parking, issue is concerned, and I'd like to thank all the committee for being brave enough to turn this down in the first place, and hopefully this will be a start of many appeals dismissed on the grounds that we worry about in terms of our residents, whichever ward we represent in, because it's just getting too much. And if anybody else would like to say something to Ian, well, something within reason.
Yes, please, Chair. I just wanted to.
Yes.
It's Councillor Kerr. I just wanted to highlight that it was important to think about all the reasons why we are turning something down, because we may get agreement on some of our refusal points and not all of them. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Lucy. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Ian, for that. The next one is the development control performance. Will it be you again?
Correct. Yes, it's Ian Woodhead, Chair,
Ian.
Development Control Manager. Again, I just highlight this is Q1 performance, April to June this year. So effectively,
Yes. Who's that?
lockdown performance. So I just highlight that clearly the incoming applications were down in terms of number. Performance was obviously a very good level on major and non-major categories. One thing I would just like to highlight under Part 9.1 Health and Safety, is that effectively we've worked remotely since the end of March and continue to do so, and all members will be obviously aware that all colleagues are working like that, and people have different challenging circumstances in terms of what's going off at home, what homeschooling they might be doing, and things like that. So we've tried to engage with colleagues and keep in touch and have Skype meetings, but there are still the challenges of working remotely and not having access to the council chamber, the council house, and all the normal facets of working life. So it has been a challenge, but we continue to try and provide the best service possible. Happy to take any questions on the report as well. Thank you.
I think we've lost his contact again through the speech.
I think the chair's
telephone
gone.
came up.
I think while we wait for the chair to come back, I guess we go straight to item 8, unless anybody has any questions on item 7.
Move on, Chair.
No, thanks then, Ian, for working for the team, for working under considerably difficult circumstances.
Thank you, Councillor West. Thank you.
Chair, we have just thanked the team for their hard work, and we are ready to move on to item 8.
Right. Can anybody hear me now?
Yes, mate.
Yeah, I can hear you, Chair. Are you there, Chair?
Chair,
Hello?
can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, only just you. I've got you back again now. So you've handled that amicably in my absence for a few seconds. Can we just move on to number 8 now as soon as possible before we lose the feed again on applications to be considered tonight? And the first one on there is let me see. Sorry, what was that? Oh, right, okay, I'll do that then. Okay. Right, so first one is 9 Breeden Hill Road, to change of use from 6-bed to 8 occupants. Which one is, who's going to tell us about this? I believe we have speakers on this as well.
That's me, Chair. Thank
Okay,
you.
Ian, can you tell us about this then?
Yes, good evening. It's Ian Woodhead, Development Control Group Manager again. This application, I'll kick off with tidying up the report in terms of housekeeping items. Part 5.1 in the Highways Development Control part does include reference to Breeden Hell Road. So apologies for that unfortunate typo. On to the main report, Chair. This application seeks permission for the conversion of this 6-bed house in multiple occupation to a sui generis large 6-bedroom, 8-occupant house in multiple occupation. Other than the provision of an external cycle store, no external works are proposed. It is important to note that the proposal comprises the conversion of the former dwelling, which is operating lawfully as a 6-person house in multiple occupation, to create an 8-person house in multiple occupation, utilising the 2 largest rooms as ensuite double bedrooms. The proposal has attracted objections from Councillor Hussain, who's here to speak tonight, and local residents who are concerned about the intensification of the use and the perceived impact on local residents, the character of the area and community cohesion in general. I acknowledge these concerns and am aware that councillors have raised concerns with similar applications at recent meetings, and the issue of houses in multiple occupation is a current hot topic. However, I must stress that this property is currently operating lawfully as a 6-bed, 6-person house in multiple occupation. That is the fallback position, and this application is therefore only addressing the additional 2 occupants and the resultant impact of such an increase. There are no objections from our highways colleagues or our colleagues in housing standards, and in my view, the proposed increase of 2 residents in this property would not be unduly detrimental to local residents by virtue of the additional comings and goings and associated activity. I promote the recommendation as printed and invite Councillor Hussain to address committee.
Thank you. Chair, can I make a start? Chair? Can you hear me, the rest of you?
Yes, Councillor Hussain, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Yes, Fareed.
Okay, I'll make a start then, and hopefully Councillor Khan will rejoin us as and when he can. It's not that often that I actually come before the planning committee because my other colleague councillors do a good job and they try their best to protect the interests of the ward in general. On this occasion, I was approached by the practitioners and they came to see me at home. And because I also live on Breedon Hill Road, it was easier for them to just pop round and have a chat. Some of the concerns which they expressed were listed on the petition which has already been presented to the council. The points I want to make are, first of all, there's a slight factual error. There is a property at number 61 Breedon Hill Road which is in multiple occupation. I think the report indicates that there aren't any. Number 61 is actually already a property in multiple occupation. I think it provides services to people with learning disability, but I think technically it is under a property which is in multiple occupation. The reasons for my objections are very similar to the case that you heard on Leecraft Road, which is over-intensified use of residential property, which is likely to be injurious to local amenities. Now, I know the council is not expected to provide a parking space for each resident if people have to, parking where in the streets where there is no off-street parking. In some streets the parking pressures are actually quite acute, and Breedon Hill Road is one such street where the parking pressures also arise because there is a limited parking on St. Chad's Road. It's a narrow road, so the cars are not allowed to park on both sides, although the residential dwellings are on both sides. So some of the residents on St. Chad's Road have to find parking spaces in the adjoining streets like Biden Street, Breedon Hill Road, Empress Road, etc. And we also get some pressure from people who visit Burton Road, and especially International Hotel. If there is a big function there, then obviously people tend to find a parking space wherever they can. So I think this property has already got 6 residents, and bearing in mind all these properties were actually built as 4-bedroomed houses. I think it already accommodates more than a reasonable number of single adults. Now that will intensify the use if we gave this permission and we had 8 residents. Although I have read in the report that there's going to be a bike park in the back, but that doesn't mean if anybody who wants to take up occupancy in there, they have got a car, the landlord or the managing agent is not likely to say, I'm going to not offer you the tenancy because you've got a car. it will just add to the pressure. Now, although I understand council's position that, you know, people don't expect a parking space smack outside their house, but at the same time, these people are expected to drive around in neighbouring streets for 10-15 minutes before they...
Councillor Hussain, sorry to interrupt. That's your 3 minutes, I'm afraid. That's James has just...
I've more or less said everything I wanted to say. I thought it was 5 minutes. Sorry, I tailored my speech up to 5 minutes, but that's okay. I've made it more or less made my points. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Can everybody still hear me, although I've lost the screen?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Chair, are you there? Chair, can you hear us?
Yeah, we've lost him again.
Councillor West, are you able to take over?
Yes, Karen. There we go. I'm afraid I don't have the paperwork of the list of speakers, so I'm not sure if there were any other speakers on this item.
No, it's Ian Woodhead, Development Control Manager, Councillor West. That's it for this item. Would you like me to lead on?
Yes, please, Ian.
Yeah, as I would just highlight, clearly in my preamble, I mentioned that these proposals are a thorny issue for members, but I would just highlight the fallback position. This is operating lawfully for 6 people. We're increasing it by two people, so we have to be very mindful of that. Come the vote. So I can pass on to my colleague Chris Thorlier, Highways Development Control colleague, if you've got any comments about localised issues. But his comments are in the report as well. So back to you, Councillor West.
Thanks, Ian. I will open it up to committee members. Lucy has indicated she would like to speak. So Lucy, please take the floor.
Thanks, Chair. We've had so many occasions, and we'll continue to have occasions where parking is the main issue. And I think we, as a council, need to be able to be a bit more proactive in finding a solution that's going to work, not just for people who might live in this house, but generally for lots of communities where we have a problem. And I think that we should do some work on that. And I think we have to talk about how we would achieve that. In this instance, we're not actually asking, as far as I can see, for a travel plan to be put together by the people who are running the property, the householder or the managing agents or whoever. Is that something that we could do as a condition for this application?
Yeah, hello, it's Ian Woodhead, Development Control Manager. Yeah, if you think that's a reasonable request in order to control, because we have clearly a cycle parking element and we're relying on sustainable modes of travel, I think that would meet the tests of reasonableness if you were so inclined, Councillor Kerr.
In that case, I propose that we add a condition to acquire a travel plan before the additional capacity of the building is brought into use.
I would second that, thank you.
Did any other committee members wish to speak on this? I think I see that Shiraz is trying to dial in, potentially.
Yes, please.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Lucy. We've got to look at something to do with this parking, especially where we've got terraced houses and everything else that's with these houses of multiple occupancy. I think it's it's getting beyond a joke now for the city. We seem to be being inundated with these applications, and there's more to come later on during the course of the meeting. And I do honestly think that we've seriously got to look at things, because we've come to a saturation point, not only with the properties, but also with the road structure and how we can deal with it in many of these areas where they're wanting to put these houses of multi-occupancy. And it is a serious issue, and I would welcome a subgroup or whatever it is to look at it seriously. And I do believe we've got something coming up on houses of multi-occupancy quite soon anyway, so perhaps that could be incorporated into the actual meeting, Ian, if that's all right. And basically, yeah, we've come to a saturation point, as I say, and I think we've got to turn these down as often as we possibly can using CP37. Is it, Ian, for the Spondon one? Traffic, was that right? CP37.
Ian Woodhead, Development Control Manager. You were nearly right, Councillor Pegg. CP23. 23. Sorry, I knew there was a 3 in it. Don't worry about it. I've got that many numbers in front of me. I can never remember them all. But yeah, using CP23, it's proved to be successful in one instance. We've got to start trying to do it legally as best we can. Thank you.
May I come back? Because I think this.
You can, Lucy. There are potentially outstanding responses from Ian or Chris, but if you want to continue, that would be fine.
It was just on that particular point, because I think the situation here is rather different to Spondon's, because I think Spondon there wasn't any nearby car parking on street, whereas here we have added competition for nearby on-street car parking. I think that's right. I remember, Ian.
Yeah, it's Ian Woodhead, Development Control Manager. Yeah, we've got to be careful not to throw the blanket of policy CP23 over all of these. We've got to look at each case on their individual merits, and of course have a good assessment of local parking conditions. Now, Councillor Pegg's right. There is a meeting lined up in the near future with Paul Clark on his return from leave, where we're going to have a big mature discussion about these proposals, what powers we've got under the various acts, what we can legitimately do, and looking at the overall issue of housing multiple occupation and their positive contribution to housing delivery and giving people accommodation and delivering into the housing stock. So we've got to look at this in the round, and that meeting is scheduled for the next few weeks. So hopefully that will bring out all the issues and people will be able to get involved in that. Thank you, Councillor West.
Councillor West, can I just come in?
Chris,
can I
sorry, just 1 second. Go
can
first.
somebody
Chris,
from IT contact Gerard's? Somebody from IT, please. Sorry.
I'm not sure if there's anybody from IT on here.
All right, sorry.
If somebody from Democratic Services could potentially contact the chair, that would be appreciated.
Hello.
Thanks, Dom. Chris, there were some highways concerns from Councillor Pegg raised. Would you like to come back on anything?
The only thing I can really add, Councillor, is that National Planning Framework Policy states that I can only ask for refusal if there's a highway safety issue or if there's going to be a significant impact on the surrounding network. 2 additional occupants, it would not be, I cannot demonstrate that would fall within those parameters. Therefore, I can't ask for refusal.
Thank you, Chris. Any other committee? Lucy, you're typing. Did you want to come back? Any other committee members wanting to speak?
Yeah, can I speak?
Yes, of course.
Sorry to butt in before because Shiraz was getting desperate to get him in. Yeah, what about the Breedon Hill Road? You know, it is very tight. There's a lot of cars parked on both sides. I don't know how you can give a permission for another 2 vehicles to be there. There's definitely going to be more cars, more traffic, and I'm sure there's going to be the traffic's going to go more. So we should go against this, and I'll be voting against this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nawaz. Councillor McChrystal.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I appreciate all HMOs. We're meant to look at them, or we should be looking at them all within their own merit. I'm struggling to see any merit with this particular application, and certainly very concerned about setting a precedent for the street as well, where we know from history, where we get one HMO, another one soon appears. I certainly can't support this application based on highway grounds, but also I think we can do better in terms of housing for people, and we don't need to be cramming people in to what are effectively 4-bedroom houses and doubling the occupancy to 8 when we can find better solutions for accommodation. I absolutely believe that. So I won't be supporting this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McChrystal. Any other members of the committee wishing to speak?
Move to the vote, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. It's always difficult to know whether someone wants to speak and we just can't hear them. We will move to the vote then, please.
Chair, thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to paste
Chair,
in the...
May we just confirm about the additional condition? Because we already have...
Vodafone voicemail service for 07812301377. Please leave a message after the tone. When you finish recording, please hang up or press the hash key.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, Lucy. So move to the vote with the condition that you have added.
Firstly, because we already have a house in multiple occupation there, and therefore having a travel plan for the existing 6 residents might actually improve the situation on the street.
Chair, if Ian could just confirm that extra condition in relation to the travel plan, and I would suggest that unless any members object to it, then we say that it's unanimous and they all agree, and then we can move on the recommendation for the application.
Yes, it's Ian Woodhead, Development Control Manager. Yeah, my understanding was that Councillor Kerr put it forward and it was seconded by Councillor Carr, and there were no other comments about it. So as far as I'm concerned, that would be attached to any permission. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so we're going to we'll move to the vote on the recommendation to grant planning permission with conditions. I'll go through the members alphabetically, and I don't think we have Councillor Anders in the meeting, so I'll move on. Councillor Bettany, please. Do we have Councillor Bettany?
Yes, we do. We have Councillor Bettany.
Thank you.
I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for the application, and I understand the material planning restrictions in this case. I vote against the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Bettany. Councillor Kerr, please.
I confirm that I've been present throughout the presentation and discussion for this application, and I understand the material planning considerations in this case, and I vote for it.
In favour, thank you.
In favour of the recommendation.
Thank you,
to
Councillor.
Approve.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Carr, please.
I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application, and I understand the material planning considerations in this case, and I vote for the application.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Nawaz, please.
I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application and understand the material planning consideration in this case. I vote against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Nawaz. Councillor McChrystal, please.
I can confirm that I've been present throughout this presentation for this application and understand the material planning considerations in this case. I vote against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor McChrystal. Councillor Pearce, please.
I confirm that I've been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning considerations in this case. I vote in favour of the...
Please hold.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. I got that there, in favour. Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Paul Pegg, please.
I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning consideration in this case, and I vote against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Pegg. Councillor West, please, Chair.
Thank you, Stephen. Bear with, let me get the thing. I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning considerations in this case. I vote against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. That was a vote against. Thank you, Chair. And just to complete my list, Councillor Shiraz Khan, are you present? No. Chair, I have 3 in favour and 5 against the recommendation as printed.
Thank you, Stephen. So that recommendation is lost. Mr. Woodhead, or Mr. Teasdale, do we need to now take a vote? Do we now need to move another suggestion?
Good evening, Stephen Teasdale, legal officer. I hope you can probably not see me at present, so hopefully...
Can't see you, but we can hear you.
You can
see you as well.
Hey. It's working. Yes, I think what you really need to do is actually talk about reasons for refusal and come up with some reasons for refusal. I think it's primarily on parking, clearly. I think that's the concerns on the impact on the highway in terms of parking. I think that's a primary reason. I don't know whether Ian wants to expand on that and sort of make suggestions in relation to a parking reason.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. It's Ian Woodhead, Development Control Manager. Yes, while the debate was ongoing, I was scribbling down potential reasons for refusal. And it would go something along the lines of, in the opinion of the local planning authority, the proposed change of use of the property to an 8-bed house in multiple occupation would create, by virtue of the resulting intensification of the residential use, an unacceptable form of development that would be injurious to the amenities enjoyed by neighbouring residents and detrimental to the character of the street by reason of the required additional on-street parking to serve future residents, which could not be safely accommodated within the already congested on-street parking levels on the highway. And then go on to talk about policies GD5 and CP23. That would be my recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Excuse me. Sorry. Sorry, I keep checking that the chair hasn't appeared back, but I don't think he has. So we need to put that to...
Chair, may I just ask whether there's any evidence that it's Councillor Lucy Kerr, is there any evidence that if there are 2 people sharing a room or sharing accommodation, they're more likely to have a vehicle than if somebody is living by themselves? Because I'm thinking if there are 2 incomes coming in, it might make it more affordable, and therefore moving from single bedrooms to double bedrooms could actually be a reason why it could be detrimental. Do we have any evidence of that?
No, it does seem a reasonable assumption and is something that I considered. Chris, is there any evidence for that?
Chris Thorley, Traffic and Transportation Engineer. I'm not aware of any specific evidence. We do tend to work on the basis of 0.7 vehicles per residential occupant, but that's only a kind of rule of thumb, and there's no evidence that in any one particular location there would be any, because equally there could be none in another location. And it doesn't really work for single dwellings. We're talking more of a larger development. So I'm not aware of anything specific. If I was, I'd actually look forward to using it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so we need to. Sorry, Ian, forgive me. What do we need to do now?
Right, sorry, Councillor West. Basically, if members don't wish to make any further comments in relation to the proposal suggested by Ian for the refusal, then I would ask for that to be put a proposal for refusal based on those reasons. Ask for somebody to move it and second, and then move to a vote.
Thank you, Stephen. Can I, if there are no further questions and no further comments, can I have a proposer and seconder, please?
I'll propose it.
Thank you, Paul.
I'll second it.
I'm not sure who that was because my sound wasn't very good, but...
Councillor Bettany.
Thank you, Paul. Can we move to a vote then, please?
Chair, thank you. I shall go through the list alphabetically again. Apologies for my camera not being on earlier. Okay. First of all, Councillor Bettany, please.
Right, I'm here. Do I need to read out all the stuff again?
I think.
No, you don't. Sorry, Stephen Teasdale here. No, you don't.
Okay, then I'll vote in favour.
Thank you, Councillor Bettany. Councillor Kerr, please.
Oh, sorry, I'm trying to get my video on. I will vote against.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Carr, please.
I will abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. Councillor Nawaz, please.
For.
In favour, thank you. Not strictly alphabetical, but Councillor McChrystal, please.
In favour.
Thank you, Councillor McChrystal. Councillor Pearce, please.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Pegg, please.
Sorry, in favour.
Thank you, Councillor Pegg. And Councillor West, Chair, please.
In favour, Stephen.
Thank you. And I take it we don't have Councillor Shiraz Khan here as previously. I have Chair 5 in favour, 1 against and 2 abstentions.
Thank you, Stephen. So the amended motion is carried. Ian, will we need, or Stephen, sorry, will we need a nomination for somebody for appeal purposes?
Yes, thank you, Councillor West. We do need somebody to be to volunteer or to be sort of proposed.
Go on, then.
I was going to say I don't hear anybody coming forward, but thank you, Councillor Pegg. You did such an excellent job on the last one.
I've still got another one to write yet, so don't push me.
Okay, so are we good to move on to item 2?
I think we are, Chair.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I don't know who's presenting item 2.
It's me, Councillor West.
Thanks, Ian.
Ian Woodhead, Development Control Manager again. Just for the benefit of tidying up the report, we've got some housekeeping items. Firstly, apologies for the reference in the report to a disabled parking space. This should, of course, be referred to as a DDA compliant accessible parking space. On to the main report, Chair. Full planning permission is sought to develop this brownfield site, which occupies a position on the Uttoxeter Old Road frontage between its junctions with Etwell Street and Slack Lane. Permission is sought to erect a single building of 4 stories to accommodate student accommodation, and the proposed 12 apartments would accommodate between 3 and 6 bedrooms to provide a total of 59 bedrooms. This accommodation would be served by 6 car parking spaces off the Etwall Street frontage, and 12 external cycle parking spaces would be supplemented by 5 internal spaces, giving 17 cycle parking spaces in total. An internal bin storage facility would be accessed off the Uttoxeter Road frontage, and this would be managed and maintained through a separate management agreement with a private company. In terms of the layout, the footprint of the proposal effectively utilises the site area, and the architect has creatively used the space to provide a building with an interesting style, articulation and elevational form. The building would sit within a predominantly 2-storey residential context, although this is a main road location, and there are examples of larger apartment buildings nearby which can be found to the northeast of Uttoxeter Old Road, and to the southwest at the Junction Street, Uttoxeter Old Road, Parcel Terrace Junction. The application has attracted objections from a small number of local residents and Councillor Adrian Pegg. One of the residents has provided a very detailed representation in relation to a range of issues including character, context, residential amenity, parking, refuse collection and wider community cohesion. As your report concludes, the principle of residential use in this location is acceptable. It is a previously used site in a highly sustainable location. The proposal can contribute to meeting housing needs and provide 24 dwellings towards our housing requirement. The proposal would also provide bespoke accommodation for students, which provides an opportunity for private rented accommodation in the city to be used by other groups. Subject to the imposition of the range of conditions in your report, there are no highways objections or other technical concerns. Overall, it is considered that the benefits of bringing this site back into use and the additional housing delivery outweigh any concerns relating to the impact of the proposal on visual or residential amenities. In my opinion, the architect has also crafted a scheme which exhibits some creative flair and bespoke design. Given the non-viability of the proposed scheme and the ability to review the costs at an agreed trigger point, it is considered that the proposal is currently acceptable without making any developer contributions. Consequently, the proposal is considered to be in compliance with core strategy policies CP1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 16, 19, 22, 23 and MH1, and with SAVE local plan policies GD5, E24 and T10. I promote the recommendation as printed, Chair, and invite Councillor Pegg to address committee.
Before we go on, can anybody hear me now?
Thank you.
Hello?
Hi Shiraz, yes we can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you, Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear
well,
you.
I'm on the phone now. I don't know what's happening, but I can't get on the screen. But I can see the photos that Ian put up. And yes, Paul, you go ahead, and then hopefully I'll be able to carry the rest of the meeting out.
Chair, it isn't Paul Pegg, it's Councillor Adrian Pegg who's speaking.
Adrian Pegg.
Sorry, Adrian, you're a better looking chap than Paul, so I apologise for that.
No worries, Chair. Thank you, Chair. This is the right development, but in the wrong place. Wrong because of its size, not just the size of the building, but also because of the number of occupants within it. Wrong because the site may be contaminated, and wrong because of the environmental impact with lack of parking and potential for antisocial behaviour. The design access statement says, and I quote, occupants are likely to have no access to private transport. I believe this statement to be false. Just ask the residents that live near houses multiple occupancy, especially those occupied by students. They will tell you this is not true, because the amount of cars that are parked on the streets. Etwall Street has already parking problems. This development, with 59 bedrooms and equating to between 59 and 118 occupants, as well as visitors, will exacerbate this dreadful problem. I do not believe that this development will release existing properties from HMOs for family use. I can see no evidence to support this. I have noted that the Planning Department's report, they acknowledge that this development is higher than surrounding dwellings. Therefore, by default, it will dwarf the houses on Etwall Street and reduce privacy, etc. Indeed, they have compared the development to Vernon Gate and James Close. This was put to me by the head of planning. As I said then, Vernon Gate is a business complex and James Close has more than ample parking facilities. There is no comparison. Has the university been consulted to see if this development is acceptable and conforms to their standards? I have grave concerns with the district valuer's comments that this development is not financially viable. If this is the case, what will the developers do once it is built to ensure that it is financially viable? And what else will they turn it into to facilitate this? Should this application be granted, could restrictions on its use be stipulated? To me, this development seems doomed before it has begun. And I find the Planning Department's comments that the benefits outweigh the minor concerns to be insensitive and shows lack of thought and consideration to residents. It is time that residents were listened to. It is time residents were supported. And therefore I ask committee to reject this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adrian. I missed who was presenting this. If it's Ian, would you like to come back on any of the comments Adrian Pagg made?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's Ian Woodhead, Development Control Manager. Yeah, clearly there are a number of elements to this scheme. It's a brownfield site on a main road frontage. Yes, the scale of the building is bigger than the predominantly two-storey buildings on Etwall Street. Clearly, this is a main road frontage. It's something that we have looked carefully at in terms of the degree of separation. The nearest part of the Etwall Street frontage is approximately 16 metres from the facing residential properties opposite. That's actually a greater separation distance than the relationship on Etwall Street on the two opposing sides, where there's about an 11-metre clearance. Clearly, the site is a brownfield site. Councillor Pegg mentioned the contaminated land. That is something that our environmental protection team have looked at and have recommended conditions. We are dealing with student accommodation. We are looking at clearly in the context of our climate challenge, promoting sustainable travel, getting people to cycle, walk, use bus routes. This is on the number 8 Arriva bus route. So we're satisfied that this is a sustainable location just outside of the city centre. Councillor Pegg mentioned, has the university been consulted? Well, they're not consulted on all applications. Clearly they can make comments if they see fit. This would be a speculative scheme, but clearly the university is a growing, expanding organisation, so that's something that would be attractive, and this is a market-led scheme, so the developer has undoubtedly tested the market. In terms of the viability appraisal, it's in your report that there would be a clawback. There's an overage provision. We would look at that at 90% occupancy, and the developer has indicated that the ongoing rental from this and the income from that is the reason that's promoting the scheme. In terms of the design of the scheme, I think it's an interesting bespoke design. We're often presented with fairly bland offerings, if I'm honest, with apartment schemes. But this deals with the characteristics of the site and prevents some very good surveillance and a good frontage to Uttoxeter Old Road. In terms of the parking issue, if members are concerned with that element of the scheme, I'd suggest that we do look at that in more detail. If members were minded to grant permission, that we look at the potential controls we've got, whether it be through the Section 106 agreement or through conditional controls, through a travel plan and monitoring scheme, how we could control the on-site car parking if members were concerned about that. And clearly we've got to make a judgment here. We've got a brownfield site opportunity. It's currently derelict. This is a significant investment. There will be some impacts on neighbouring residents. That's a given. but clearly we have to balance up as a city how we move forward in terms of using our sustainable brownfield sites, encouraging sustainable modes of travel to adapt to climate change and the big challenge we've got to get people out of their private cars and get them walking and cycling, and promote this in terms of housing delivery. We need the housing. There is something in the housing delivery test rule book part 7.2 which gives you a ratio of student accommodation that you are able to equate to the provision of what would be released from the housing stock by students occupying a bespoke accommodation. So I feel that the report is comprehensive. I do appreciate the concerns of Councillor Pegg. We've had a very low level of local objection to this application, albeit one of those objections was exceedingly detailed. But we have got a low number of objections, and we feel that we have done as much as we can do in terms of the overall content of this scheme, and I promote the recommendation, Chair. Any further comments on parking? I've got Chris Thorley with me. Thank you.
Chris, did you want to say anything before I move on?
Thank you, Chair. Chris Thorley, Highways Development Control Engineer. My colleagues in transport planning have looked at this and have stated that the accommodation is approximately 15 minutes walk from Mark Eaton Street campus, 30-minute walk from Kedleston Road, 10 to 15-minute walk to the city centre. They've then gone on to say that the site is served by number 8 or either service, and students can also catch the free student transfer bus. That being the case, they're of the view that the site is a very sustainable site, and have then gone on to say that anticipated there will not be a severe impact upon the highway network as a result of the application. Back to the NPPF again, I can only ask for refusal if it can be seen to have a severe impact. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Thank you, Chris. Well, before I offer what I think about this plan, I'd like to open it to the committee, and the first person I have who wants to speak on this is Paul Pegg, I believe.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I find it interesting, this one. It's in my ward, obviously. We keep saying, was it 24 flats, but in actual fact it's down for 59 residents. And also right next door to that, planning permission has been granted for a further 12 flats. So in that small section there will be 71 occupants. 71 in that small area. That's 71 vehicles. That is unacceptable. It's unsustainable. It's on a major junction that we've got problems with the traffic flow anyway. We've had to put traffic calming down in and around the Slack Lane area. Etwell Street is congested. We're in the process of going out to consultation on parking permits. I don't see how we can accept another 71 vehicles or flats within that area. Yes, we need it. It's too big. It's far too high for the area. It could be at least a floor lower, in my opinion. I think that the whole aspect of it is totally out of character for the area, and I think it really needs looking at again. It looks a nice building on the pictures, but when you actually put it in to the Victorian terraced houses, it will look out of place. There is no two doubts about that. As my colleague Councillor Adrian Pegg said, we can talk about St James's Close. Those flats there are not overlooking private properties. They are overlooking office blocks and offices and that. And I think that this has got to be rejected. And I might be wrong on this, but I still the developer is also still working on a site at the top of Stepping Lane. That's not been completed in the last 4 years. So it's a concern to me exactly what what will happen with the site. It's far too big. That whole area would, as like I say, would have 71 occupants. 71. And that is far too big for that site. and I will certainly be voting against it.
Thank you, Paul. Well, actually, I don't like the reference being made to St James's Close, because that's quite a nice development, and we wouldn't mind them type of developments. But before, as I said, I say my piece. The next person to speak is Mike Carr.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's Councillor Mike Carr. Well, I take a different view. I have sat on Conservation Area Committee for a number of years, and I take an interest in architecture and nice design. And I have to say, considering some of the boring stuff we've seen recently, I think this is a really, really nice looking building. And it looks to me as if the architect has really thought about what they want to do. Yeah, there are issues in that area, but we need these houses, and that for me is a contribution in terms of the design of the buildings around there. Really nice, and I shall be voting in favour. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mike. Lucy Kerr next, Councillor.
Oh, hang on, I'm just trying to get my video started.
Oh, don't do that, Lucy.
No, it's all right at the moment. I've got several questions, and then I want to say what my opinion is. So there's discussion in the highways comments that the footway condition is poor along there, and they expect it to get worse due to putting in utilities and things. But there doesn't seem to be a condition that would require it to be resurfaced, and I wondered whether that had been overlooked. So that's the first question, or whether it's managed in some other way. The cycle parking that's to the rear of the building, I'm not clear whether that is gated off or not, because I think there should be incidental cycle parking. So if people are coming to visit, they're coming with a bicycle, there is somewhere to park it. So either that's round the back and it's not gated, or else it needs to be around the front, and that's probably just a couple of Sheffield stands, or it might even be the design of the railings. It just needs to be something.
Would you like the answers to these questions before you give us your opinion, then, Lucy?
I'll give you a third point as well, and then we'll get the answers before I give you my opinion, if you like. And finally, I wondered whether we were able to condition putting either photovoltaics, which would be my preference, on the roof, or make it a green roof to the main building and not just to the cycle racks.
Right. Ian, would you like to answer a couple of Lucy's questions? I'm not sure about the green roof, but the cycle and the footpath.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's Ian Woodhead, Development Control Manager. Yeah, if there's a reinstatement of the footway that's required as a result of these works, I'd defer to Chris Thorley and his team. But essentially, if that's necessary and reasonable and proportionate, I'm sure we could attach a condition. Cycle parking, we obviously want to be secure and accessible, so we could put conditions to ensure that that's the case, Councillor Kerr. And finally, the PV's green roof issue. We can certainly, if members follow your line and think that in terms of our climate change agenda and the need to be taking advantage of these alternative sources of energy and thermal efficiency, if they support you on that, we could attach another condition. So we could embrace those by condition, Councillor Kerr. They do seem to fall within the bounds of reasonableness. So I'd defer to Chris about existing footway situation. If it's an existing situation, then we might be, needing to do the work anyway. But I'll go over to Chris. Thank you.
Chris Thorley, Highways Development Control Engineer. As far as the repairing of the defective or damaged footway, we would generally seek to do that under the under the agreement with the Highway Authority under Section 184 of the Highways Act. So hopefully our colleagues in Street Pride would ensure that that was then sorted out, which is why I've not specifically conditioned it, but we can, as Ian says, proportionally condition it.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, I think it's helpful to condition things as far as possible. We've got in Little Over Ward, we've had problems where footways were to be created and they never actually happened. So I think the stronger we can be. I
don't like interrupting you, Lucy. You're a lovely person, but can we just stick to this one first? I mean, you've got the answers for that. can you just tell us what you think about the application as it is now?
Well, just that I would support having those additional conditions in, and I think there should be a condition for incidental cycle parking as well as secure cycle parking around the back, so that visitors on cycles have got somewhere to lock their vehicle up. The outline travel plan, which we haven't received, I think is actually quite an important point. And again, I think that we ought to be asking for an outline travel plan before the work starts to make sure that people are thinking about that as part of the whole of the design and management of the building. But otherwise, I think it's would be an asset to the area, tidying up what has been a really scruffy and uninspiring corner. I don't think you can say that advertising hoardings add to a local area. This will remove those and put something in its place that is more positive. I would love to see the potential for more of the family houses in the local area, which are currently houses in multiple occupation, no longer being occupied by students because they are choosing to move into better, more purpose-built accommodation, so that properties either become let to families or they might even go up on the market and be sold to more new families to move into the area. And that I see as a benefit. If we're going to object to houses in multiple occupation, then we need to give people somewhere a different alternative to live when they are a student or they're a single person, and this is one of the solutions for that. I think it balances well with the new development at the other side of the railway bridge between Junction Street and Uttoxeter Old Road. A slightly different style, but this one says more, it's a slightly more prominent position. I think it would be an asset to the area. We do need to get the travel plan right, and I would certainly support conditions for PVs on the roof, for incidental cycle parking and secure cycle parking around the back, and make sure that we can resurface that footway as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Councillor Gulfraz Nawaz.
Just a quick point. You know, the highways, what time do you go there and look at this, the traffic? Because when you were there at 8:30 in the morning and the refuge lorries are around there, it's chaos around there. And, there's no traffic, and having flats like these for students is going to be even worse. So I don't think I'll be supporting this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nawaz. Councillor Joanna West, did you want to say something? I noticed you put back on the concerned redeveloper. Did you want to elaborate on that?
Thank you, Chair. Just following on from what Councillor Paul Pegg had said, if there are concerns about this developer already doing a development at the, I think you said Stepping Lane, Paul, but in the near vicinity, and if that hasn't been finished in sort of 4 years, then I do have concerns there. If we have any feedback on that, that would be great.
Thank you, Councillor West. Who else have I got? Chris, have you said your part, or did you want to say anything else?
I'll just add one other thing, if I may, Chair. Councillor Kerr was asking about a travel plan. I believe that's actually a condition that they've got to provide one before they commence the works.
Right, okay.
That's it then.
The travel plan currently says it needs to be in place before, but I think by the time 90% is occupied, or it's after it's been constructed, or before people can move in, but it's not before they start work on site.
Okay.
Right, okay.
Apologize.
Okay, I've got Councillor Ross McChrystal.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So my views, I'd certainly agree with Councillor Carr in terms of the aesthetics of the building. There's an interesting design, and I do believe it will lift the area. I appreciate the concerns in the height and the scale of the development to some. But the alternative is a barren brownfield site that's going to be left derelict for years to come. And I struggle to see what else could possibly be built there.
I think it was Ian Woodhead that mentioned regarding parking that something could be looked at in reference to parking, but I don't think you necessarily elaborated on what that would be and what that could look like. I certainly have concerns regarding parking on Etwall Street, and I appreciate Councillor Peggs. Both Councillor Peggs are looking at a consultation on Etwall Street regarding resident parking, or resident permit parking, which I'd hope the residents would go for, because that would alleviate a lot of issues. And I wonder if the residents of Etwall Street were going to go for resident permit parking, what would that actually look like for this development? Would that development be included in Etwall Street residential permanent parking to allow those residents to park on Etwall Street or not? So yeah, just some clarity on the potential parking issues, I think would be most useful. Thank you.
Right. Would that be you, Ian, or Chris want to clarify? Certainly, I was going to ask that question as well when you mentioned about sort of some form of parking.
That would be me with the residents parking, Chair.
Okay.
Okay. Residents parking. Well, at the moment, there's no scheme in place, although I understand also that there's going to be consultation on it. My understanding, and I'm not an expert on traffic regulation orders, is that if the development is not in place, then at the time that the consultation and the implementation is carried out, then the residents wouldn't be eligible for permits. If the development is in place before the traffic regulation order is in place, then the residents would be eligible for permits. But I don't know how permits would work given the size of the development and also the use of the site. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to add anything to that, Ian, or shall I carry on?
Yes, please, Chair. It's Ian Woodhead, Development Control Manager again. Yeah, if this is a crucial issue for members, then we could look at what we could potentially do. We've had other bespoke student accommodation in the city. You'll remember the big development on Brook Street that we visited as part of one of our Planning Control Committee tours one summer a few years ago. That's got a restriction in place. We could review that, see how that's working, look at the options as to how best to address it, and then possibly look at the timing of the residents parking scheme. If you were minded to go with a positive resolution, we could look at those things before we issued a permission and consult with yourself and Councillor West before we did anything, if that's the way you wanted to play it, because clearly it's an issue for a number of members. Thank you.
Chair.
Well, look, sorry, who's that?
Sorry, it's Stephen Teasdale, legal officer.
Hiya, Stephen. Yeah.
Hiya. Just one comment on that might assist is that I suppose if something was reflected in the travel plan that sort of sought to limit the usage by occupants of the flats, then that would provide potential support for when it came to actual, if a resident parking place was brought in, it may provide sufficient support for the traffic authority to sort of refuse to grant sort of passes to that accommodation. So we might be able to sort of build something into the travel plan as such that sort of would limit the rights of people that accommodation to have to have passes, and so that might be one way of dealing with it, and that would hence give the authority a reason for refusing to grant passes. I mean, so perhaps that could be reflected in the travel plan.
Right. Well, thank you, Stephen. I think we tried something similar to this in Harry Street, and it didn't really work. But let's not get ourselves bogged down onto just the resident permits, because Atwell Street, as we know, is a very short street. So regardless of how you time it, I mean, Ian mentioned something about the timing of it. Well, those people that live there, if they apply for a permit, they'll want to park there whenever they want, not because of the hours that are available. But let's have a look at the substantive issue on this, and that is 71 people on the corner of Slack Lane and Atwell Street. Now, Mike Carr mentioned about the design. Well, look, the design is okay. There was references made to St. James's Close. Well, that's completely different type of development, and it works well. There's plenty of parking there, nicely set out. This is a corner plot that's being transformed into 71 residents, shall we say, and 59, I think it is, the one that was put on here, the 59. If these people, we have to remember something not too far away from that, in Spring Street, that we turned down on the grounds that there wasn't that much need for student accommodation, because purpose-built one at the road edge, was not in full use. Now, if that is the case, then how is this going to be put into full use? And there was a suggestion made that having this would free up some housing, that students use. That's not going to happen, because, in my opinion, I've seen it in wards, right? That if a student accommodation block or a house is made available to them, then where they leave from, then ultimately they turn that into a house of multiple occupation and put other people in. So simply having this is not going to bring houses into family use. In actual fact, this will probably deter people from having a family house in first part of Slack Lane and Atwell Street and Stepping Lane, because of what this is going to do. There is no way that we as a committee can look at this and say it's not going to impact the lives of the people that live around that area, because it is. And I wished I could say otherwise. As chair of this committee, I want to see investment come in. We want to see Section 106 money and this, but we have to ask ourselves at what cost and to whom. I mean, we are in trying to help them with being a bit lenient towards Section 106. A 3-story building, if these people, yes, they want to make money, but they don't have to maximize their profit at the expense of residents. They could quite easily have built 2 stories on this, have ground level parking, and build the building, slightly, leaving on pillars, and have accommodation parking for 20-odd cars, which is what's needed. There is no way that I can sort of say to all of you members here that, fine, they're going to be walking, they're going to use cycles, they're going to use buses, because we know that's not going to happen. 50% of these people will have cars, and they will use them, and they will try to park any and everywhere they can. And ultimately, we're responsible for that. Now, how can we justify that to the people who live on Stepping Lane, Atwell Street, and Slack Lane, Camping Street? We can't. We're going to be putting Robin Peter to pay Paul, and that's not why we're here. We're here as a committee to say, yes, we want development as long as it fits in nicely with the people living around there. Let's not inconvenience the old in order to accommodate the new. I can't see any way that I can say, that this is not going to impact that, and just pass it off as something that will get sorted out by local residents. It's not. There is. We want to be flexible with developers, but they have to reciprocate. Now, this could quite easily, as I said, have had 20 parking spaces if they designed it in the way that they can do, which is to have ground level parking and have 2 stories of accommodation. That was quite simple to do, but obviously it cuts into their profits, and they don't want to do that. So honestly, I don't know. We've had earlier tonight appeal decision go in our favor in Spondon simply because of parking issues. And if we can't get a decision like that on this building, then I don't know on what purpose they made the other decision on. this is going to severely impact the lives of everyone around that area. And if you look at, somebody mentioned Great Northern Road, well, look, they're different developments. They have parking spaces. If these people provided 20 parking spaces, I would have said to you at the start of the meeting, look, I think this is a great idea. But I can't say that simply because it's going to affect people. Is there anybody else who would like to say anything before I put it to the vote?
Yes, please, Chair.
Yes, Lucy.
I wanted to ask further about the travel plan condition, because I think that is the travel plan that is the key thing at the moment. It's there as number 13 on the conditions that have been drafted. And it says the travel plan shall set out proposals, including targets, a timetable and enforcement mechanism to promote travel by sustainable modes. Now, if we require within the travel plan for everybody here to be, nobody here to be having a car, because we have deemed that that site needs to be a car-free development, and the travel plan has to include an enforcement mechanism, then hopefully that would mean that there is monitoring, and whether or not there is residents-only car parking, there will be whoever the managing agents will have a comeback position so that they can ensure that there is not a car parking problem coming from that building. Now, we know that a quarter of households across the country don't have cars, and students are one of the least well-off sections of society and probably even less likely to have cars. So there would be enough students who don't have cars but who can walk for a quarter of an hour to get to their lectures to live somewhere like this. And if it's made clear before they sign any lease agreement that they can't bring a car to that property, then it should be able to be filled with people without cars. It'll obviously be up to the developer to decide whether or not that's the case before they start the development and take it forward. But if that is what we ask of them, I think we should be able to move people from currently living in family properties on terrace streets, with or without cluttering cars up on those streets, into an area that is properly built and designed for students.
Well, thank you, Lucy. But as yet, I haven't seen how or where this policy can be enforced, whereby we say to people you can't have a car. They're not going to declare that they have a car, but if they do and park it somewhere else, who is going to go around and check every day, every week, who has a car and who has not?
Chair,
I mean, we have to be practical about this, and it's not going to be enforceable.
Chair, it wouldn't be checked every week, but if there becomes a problem, local residents will say, that car there, which keeps parking outside my house, the person who gets out of it walks across the road and goes into that block of flats, and they stay there overnight. And that's when we can come back, and our enforcement officers, whom we now have working in every ward, would be able to ask questions of the managing agents of that property, and there should be an enforcement process,
well, obviously,
which is
Lucy,
required within our planning, travel plan.
Our PPO officers, or lack of them, if you see what's happening in the wards where the parking is an issue, you'd know that what you're suggesting is not enforceable. But thank you very much. If there's nobody else, Lucy, I don't want to.
Chair, parking is a major issue.
It's
a major issue where I live by the hospital.
You made your point. Yes, we had problems there. That's why everybody
so
around the Royal Hospital.
Parking problems.
I'm not prepared to get into a personal argument with you, Lucy. You've said what you wanted to say, and that's enough. Is there anybody else who would like to say anything before I put it to the vote? No? Okay, in that case, would somebody like to move it?
Chair, Councillor McChrystal has just commented that he would like to speak.
Okay, Councillor McChrystal, what would you like to say?
Thank you, Chair. So I would agree with Councillor Kerr that developments like this and will help the market in terms of freeing up family homes and properties that are on Wild Street that student HMOs as it stands at the moment. I have seen developments like this work elsewhere, and terrace developments in places like Manchester, Longsight in particular. The only way I could possibly support this development, if there was going to be, as Ian Woodhead has laid out, a really robust travel plan, and accelerate the residential parking permit ideas, probably not just for Etwall Street, but also consult, maybe focus on Slack Lane, Champion Street as well, possibility of Granville Street, to really try and free up this as much as possible a car-free development. I completely agree with yourself, Chair, that to have this as a no-car development, and there's no way you can condition folks moving into this development not to have cars. It's just not enforceable in any shape or form. But yeah, the only way I could possibly support this development would be through a very, very robust travel plan that would need to be pre-agreed, as Ian has laid out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McChrystal. If there's nobody else, then would somebody like to move this to the vote?
Chair. Move to vote.
Chair, can we confirm what changes and additions to the conditions that we are expecting?
Chair, if I may, I was going to through you invite Ian to just summarise those extra proposed conditions, and if nobody voices against them, then we'll take it that they're carried, and we can move to the vote after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's Ian Woodhead, Development Control Manager. According to my notes, and I'll be corrected by Mr. Teasdale if necessary. Firstly, Councillor Case talked about the reinstatement of the footway. Chris Thorley came back and said that could be covered under Section 184 of the Highways Act, but we can look at that post resolution. Secondly, Councillor Kerr raised cycle parking at the rear and incidental cycle parking. We can expand that condition to look at making that secure and the provision thereof. We can also look at the issue of photovoltaics or a green roof under the materials condition. Clearly, the travel plan condition is one of the main conditions which, rather than fix the wording right now, would be to discuss with our travel plan officer, Kerry Jarvis, and others, the wording, the precise wording of that to fit with the site, because clearly policy CP23 looks at advisors that we look at all cases on their individual circumstances and merits, and look at providing or encouraging lower levels of parking. So that would fit squarely with policy. So I would suggest, Chair, there's potentially the 4 extra conditions there, and that's all I've got. I'll defer to Stephen Teasdale if I've missed anything. Thank you.
No, Chair, I've got no comment. I'm happy with what Ian says.
Right, okay. Well, with those conditions in mind, would somebody like to move this to the vote?
Move to the vote, Chair.
Seconder?
Second, Chair.
Okay, all those in favour then of the officer's recommendation?
Is Steve going to go through this?
Thank you, Chair. I'll go through alphabetically then.
I keep thinking we're in the council chamber. Sorry about that. And with me being on the phone, it's totally different.
First of all, Councillor Bettany, please.
It's Councillor Bettany here. I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application, and I understand the material planning considerations in this case, and I vote against the recommendation.
Against, thank you, Councillor Bettany. Councillor Kerr, please.
I confirm that I've been present throughout the presentation and discussion of this application, and I understand the material planning considerations in this case, and I vote for the officer recommendation to agree the application.
In favour, thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Carr, please.
Hello, it's Councillor Mike Carr. I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application, and I understand the material planning considerations in this case, and I vote in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Nawaz, please.
I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application, and I understand the material planning consideration in this case. I vote against.
Against. Thank you, Councillor Nawaz. Councillor McChrystal, please.
I can affirm that I've been present throughout this presentation for this application. I understand the material planning considerations in this case. I vote in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor McChrystal. Councillor Pearce, please.
I confirm that I've been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning considerations in this case. I vote in favour of the officer's recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Councillor Paul Pegg, please.
I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application. I understand the material planning considerations in this case and I vote against the officer's recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Pegg. Councillor West, please.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor West, I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning considerations in this case. I abstain from voting for the first time ever.
Thank you, Councillor West. And finally, yourself, Chair.
I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application. I understand the material planning consideration in this case and I vote against it.
Thank you. In that case, we have 4 in favour, 4 against and 1 abstention.
Chair, I shouldn't assume this, but you do have a casting vote.
Correct.
Right. Well, I'll use my casting vote then to vote against it.
Thank you. So in total, then we have 4 in favour, 5 against and 1 abstention. Thank you.
Hello, are we still here?
Chair, it's Stephen Teasdale, legal officer. Members will need to come up with the reasons for their decision, and you'll have to nominate or have a volunteer to deal with any future appeal, presumably that if members do refuse it. I don't know whether you members want to go into recess to discuss the reasons, or do you wish to discuss them sort of?
I think the reasons are pretty apparent, you know, from that. Basically,
yeah.
it's.
It looks like I'll be writing it up again, so I'll sort it out with Ian Woodhead.
We do need reasons to discuss that.
Oh, right.
Put forward
Okay.
at the meeting here.
Well, it'll be CP23 again.
In my view, it's Councillor Lucy Kerr. In my view, the two reasons that people have mentioned for turning it down are, one, concerns about traffic, and secondly, about the height of the building regarding the residential properties facing it.
I think you know, Ian and Paul, myself, and Joanna West can sort of talk about it later on. But the main concerns, as far as I can see, is the impact on the local amenities, and parking is an issue, and the number of you know, sort of tenancies that possibly will go on that lot. So, Ian, if you'd like to work something along them lines, and I'm sure if Councillor Paul Pegg and Adrian Pegg want to contact you, they can do.
I think we need obviously to have the reasons put before members. So we need clear reasons that sort of members are aware of in terms of putting a recommendation to members as regards whether they are going to refuse it on those grounds.
Right.
So, yeah. Can I come in, Chair, please? It's Ian Woodhead, Development Control Manager.
Yes, Ian.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think the central theme of the debate was clearly the issue of parking and the impact on the immediate local area, particularly Etwall Street. So the pinnacle reason for refusal would be the inadequate parking provision for the proposal, the associated impact on the residential amenities of those residents on Etwall Street by virtue of increased comings and goings and the general inconvenience that would be associated with that development from a traffic and parking perspective. I think the issue of character and context was mentioned by a couple of members, but really wasn't the central issue. But if you felt that was a secondary issue, then it would be the scale of the development and the way that it sits within its context, particularly again Etwall Street, and the fact that the development would be an overwhelming presence in juxtaposed to the traditional two-storey street that is Etwall Street. So I would suggest framing it as a substantive reason for refusal on parking and highways grounds, with a secondary reason on character, context and scale predominantly.
Yes, I think that's fair enough.
Thank you.
There was also concern about the number of additional people who would be brought into that area on such a small footprint. So in terms of the sort of over-intensive development for that site, even though I think it would be fine.
Thank you, Lucy. Yes, it's all right. You've said that by your vote there. With that in mind then, Stephen, are we able to go forward with this now and ask for a vote?
Yeah, I mean, I think as for those three, are we talking about for the two main reasons that Ian has put forward in terms of the parking and the highway issues, and in terms of the character and particularly the scale of the building?
Yes.
Right. Yep. If what I'd suggest is if somebody wishes to recommend refusal based on those reasons, to propose it and then get a seconder, and assuming we get a seconder, we move to the vote.
Okay. Would somebody like to recommend this?
Can I just seek clarity? Are we recommending that to go to the appeals panel, that we are the things that Ian's have just discussed? That's what we're voting on.
We are, for clarification, we are recommending to refuse the application on the basis of the two reasons put forward by Ian. The first one is the parking and the traffic, and the second one is character and scale. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Apologise.
Okay.
Paul, if you're taking this on, would you also want to talk about the over-intensive development?
Yeah, I will do.
Because if, in that case, it needs to be included as a third point in reasons for refusal.
Okay.
Right. Okay. With that in mind, would somebody like to move this to the vote?
Yeah. Move to the vote. Yeah.
Just come in there. I would bolt that into the first reason, the over-intensive form of development and the associated parking, and also that would be within the second reason as well in terms of scale and character and context.
Okay.
So knitted into the first two, the two reasons.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ian. Yes. Sorry, did you say you was moving this, Paul?
I'll move it. Yeah.
And seconder. Can somebody second this? Can you hear me?
I'll second it, Chair. Councillor Bettany.
Oh, thank you. Right, with that, all those in favour then. All those in favour of the reason for refusal on this thing.
Thank you, Chair.
Stephen?
Okay, I'll go through the list. Councillor Bettany, please.
Yes, I'm in favour.
Favour, thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Sorry, I disagree with those reasons.
So you were against?
I'm against.
Thank you. Councillor Carr, please.
I also am against.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Nawaz, please.
For.
In favour, thank you. Councillor McChrystal, please.
I'm in favour with those reasons.
Thank you, Councillor McChrystal. Councillor Pearce, please.
Against.
Against. Thank you. Councillor Paul Pegg, please.
For.
Thank you, Councillor Pegg. Councillor West, please.
Thanks, Stephen. I'm abstaining again.
Abstaining, thank you. And finally yourself, Chair.
I'm for.
In favour, thank you. So that's 5 in favour, 3 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you. So that's carried then.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Chair, can I assume that Councillor Pegg has volunteered to do the appeal if there is an appeal?
Yes, that's fine. I'll do it.
Okay.
I'd already written that down, Chair, about 10 minutes ago. Councillor Pegg. Sorry.
Right. Can we move on then to the next application? 27A Darley Park Road. Who's going to tell us about this?
That's me, Chair. It's Sarah Claxton from Development Control
good evening,
Team
Sarah.
Leader. Evening. Just got one housekeeping item for members on this item. We had an additional late letter of objection from a resident received late last night, and due to the IT issues we've had today, we've not been able to circulate it. In order to address the concerns about loss of privacy and overlooking, which was raised from the flat roof of the single-storey extension on the back, we are recommending an additional condition to prevent the flat roof being used as a balcony or raised patio. In terms of the main body of the report, this is a full application for a single-storey rear and 2-storey side extension to 27A Darley Park Road in Darley Abbey. It's a modern and detached dwelling which backs onto Darley Park. Extensions include rear extension to kitchen and dining area with office, WC and utility room, and a 2-storey side extension with garage, bedroom and bathroom above. We've received 17 third-party objections to the application, which raise concerns about materials, design, scale of the extension and impact on residential amenity. Subsequent to that, plans have been amended to try and address some of those objections, and this has resulted in a reduced scale and height of the extensions and change to the overall appearance. Second floor roof extension was omitted and the rear extension has been reduced in depth. The amended proposals have attracted 2 further objections which maintain concerns about the design and amenity. During the life of the application, we also had a bat activity survey undertaken as recommended by Derbyshire Wildlife Trust. The results of this survey have been accepted by the Trust and they've recommended bat roosting features be included within the development, and this is secured by a recommended condition. So overall, we feel the revised scheme of extensions to this dwelling are acceptable, both in terms of their contemporary design and form, and with no unreasonable harm to residential amenity of neighbouring properties. The proposal is therefore accords with the intentions of the relevant local plan policies, as well as overarching design guidance in the MPPF. So we are recommending approval, subject to the recommended and additional conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I don't know. I take it we have no speakers on this then.
No speakers on this one, no.
Okay. Would anybody on the committee like to say anything? No? Would somebody like to move it to the vote?
Councillor Lucy Kerr, happy to second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favour of the recommendation, Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. I'll go through the list again. Councillor Bettany, please. Councillor Bettany, please. Excuse me.
I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning considerations with this case, and I vote for the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Bettany. Councillor Kerr, please.
Sorry. I confirm that I've been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning considerations in this case. I vote for the application.
Thank you, Councillor Chair.
Whatever.
Thank you. Councillor Carr, please.
I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning considerations in this case and I vote in favour of the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Nawaz, please.
I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning considerations in this case. I vote in favour.
Thank you, Councillor Nawaz. Councillor McChrystal, please.
I confirm that I've been present throughout the presentation for this application and understand the material planning considerations in this case. I vote in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor McChrystal. Councillor Pearce, please.
I confirm that I've been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning considerations in this case and I vote in favour of the officer's recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Councillor Paul Pegg, please.
I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning considerations in this case. I vote in favour of the officer's recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Pegg. Councillor West, please.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor West. I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning considerations in this case. I vote in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor West. And finally, yourself, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I can confirm that I've been present for all the material considerations and I vote in favour of the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. That's unanimous in favour.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Finally, we come to number 2, Repton Avenue, pages 47 to 53 on your agenda. And who's telling us about this one?
That's me again, Chair. Sarah Claxton, Development Control Team Leader. This is a full application for the retention of single-storey extension and garden room to the rear of 2 Repton Avenue. We've had quite a history of previous permissions for similar extensions on the property, and this proposal seeks to amend the extensions which were approved in 2018 and 2019, as set out in page 48 of your report. We do have a housekeeping item. We have received a letter of support for the application submitted by the agent on behalf of the applicant, which compares the dimensions of the current proposals with those of the previous approvals, and concludes that the outbuilding is reduced in size and rear extension is increased in depth. I also need to draw your attention to a slight error on section 71 of the report in the appraisal relating to the rear extension, where it describes, noted that the length has increased significantly from 4.3 metres to 8.4. It should read 7 metres to 8.4, so it's a much smaller increase in size. In terms of the main body of the report, permission is sought to retain a rear extension and outbuilding on this semi-detached dwelling in Littleover. The buildings, as you can see on the photos, have been partially built. The rear extension forms lounge kitchen area. The outbuilding is a garden room. Permission for these structures was given in 2018 initially and then amended in 2019. The current scheme is to enlarge the footprint of both buildings and amend the roof of the garden room to form a flat roof with a large overhang. There are also some minor changes to windows and door openings in the rear extension. Our main concerns are related to the increase in size and particularly the depth of both the extension and the garden room and the resulting massing and oppressive impact that this has on the neighbouring residents, both to the north and south of the property. The rear extension has increased by 1.1 metres in depth and the garden room has increased by 400 millimetres. Both are sited close to the shared boundaries with the adjacent properties on Littleover Lane and Repton Avenue. The resulting effect on the rear garden space, as you probably can see from the plan, is that it has reduced substantially from its original size to approximately 41 square metres in area. The resulting size of the dwelling, this is considered insufficient to provide adequate private amenity space for the occupants of the main dwelling. 4 objections have been received from local residents expressing their concerns about the harmful effects on their amenity, as well as the concerns about the scale and design of the extensions as they have been built. We are of the view that the overall increase in the scale of both buildings in the rear garden compared to those which were previously approved, particularly their proximity to the boundary and their scale, would result in unacceptably harmful impact on their living environment. So accordingly, we are recommending refusal of permission for the extension and the outbuilding as built, and seek enforcement action to remove the unauthorised elements of the buildings to that which has planning approval. We're also aware, as it was referred to in the report, of rear extensions to the roof of the dwelling, which are just indicated on the photos, and these do currently require planning permission. Our enforcement officer has investigated and is in negotiations with the applicant for ongoing to seek a satisfactory outcome to this element of the scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. I take it we have no speakers on this either then?
No, there's no speakers on this item either.
Okay. Would anybody like to say anything from the committee? No? Can somebody
move to the vote?
Move. Okay. Seconder?
Yeah.
Have we got a seconder? Yeah. Okay then. Yeah. All those in favour of the recommendation, Stephen?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bettany, please.
Councillor Bettany, I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for the application and I understand the material planning considerations in this case. And I vote for the recommendation.
In favour. Thank you, Councillor Bettany. Councillor Kerr, please.
I confirm that I've been present throughout the presentation and for this application, and I understand the material planning considerations in this case, and I vote in support of the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Carr, please.
Hello, it's Councillor Carr. I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application, and I understand the material planning considerations in this case, and I vote for the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Nawaz, please.
I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning consideration in this case. I vote in favour of the recommendation by the officers.
Thank you, Councillor Nawaz. Councillor McChrystal, please.
I confirm that I've been present throughout this presentation for this application and understand the material planning considerations in this case. I vote in favour of the officer's recommendation.
In favour. Thank you, Councillor McChrystal. Councillor Pearce, please.
Councillor Pearce, I confirm that I've been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning considerations in this case and I vote in favour of the officer's recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Councillor Paul Pegg, please.
I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning considerations in this case and I vote in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Pegg. Councillor West, please.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor West. I confirm that I have been present throughout the presentation for this application and I understand the material planning considerations in this case. I vote in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor West. And finally yourself, Chair.
Thank you. I confirm that I have been present throughout this presentation of the application and understand the material considerations and I vote in favour.
Thank you, Chair. That is unanimous in favour.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, we move on to the next item now, which is the exciting part about future site visits, I think. And I think Sarah is going to tell us about this.
Yeah, that's right, Chair. I'm doing the final bit for majors. As members will be aware, we aren't organising joint site visits. It's for members if they wish to go and visit each of the majors on this evening. We've got 4 major applications, 2 of which are on Ricknall Road, Little Over, adjacent to each other. The first one is a revised scheme for A1 retail food store, which we had a scheme which we refused last year, but this is a revised scheme to try and address the reasons for refusal. So if anyone's interested.
Okay.
Second one is...
It's very visible. It's in our ward, mine and Councillor Kerr's ward, Chair, and it's very visible from the highway. You don't need to visit. You can walk across the land off the Hollywood Road or off Ricknell Road and see the whole site very easily.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, next one.
Okay. Second one is 10 to 14 St Helens Street, which is on the edge of the Ring Road, locally listed buildings which have been vacant for a long time. I had a scheme before for change of use. This is for demolition and redevelopment for student accommodation.
Okay.
Okay. Third one is a scheme, a Derby Homes scheme on Barlow Street for construction of 11 apartments. Look like the houses, temporary accommodation for homeless families.
Right.
The final one is again Ricknell Road. It's adjacent, just to the south of the food store site. This is for a care home, 66-bed care home, 2 stories, access off Ricknell Road. And that's
Thank you.
That's all then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If that's all, then I'd like to thank all of you for attending tonight. And sorry about the problems I had, but my friend and the co-chair Joanna stepped in and looked after us very well. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Chair. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, all. Thanks.
Good night.
Somebody